Part 1, wherein the boys took upon the task of reviewing a film by the great Lord Stanley Kubrick. Hip hip hooray, cheerio. Greet,
Intermission.
greet, greetings and welcome to a special edition of our podcast, the first in a series of episodes and additional content available only to individuals who subscribe to our podcast. So if you are listening, we thank you for your support and we hope you enjoy the exclusive material. If you enjoy what we do, please help us out by liking us, rating us, sharing us, commenting, following us, and just generally overall loving on us. All right. With you, as always, is me, Juan,
Hmm.
joined by the BFFs, Kevin
Hello.
and Marc.
Hi-oh.
So, hello, boys. So, what we are doing in this first series is that each of us chose a decade, and then we were each randomly assigned one of those decades where we each had to then pick a movie that none of us have seen from that decade. Marc is up first, and his decade is the 70s. Kevin was assigned. Well, let me not even say those yet. We'll just say
Yeah,
that Marc
surprise.
Marc was first, and he got the 70s. So today we have, for your listening pleasure, a review of the film Barry Lyndon by who I will call, even if the other two gentlemen don't agree, but I will call him the great one, Sir Stanley Kubrick. This film, released in 1975. The movie is considered a masterpiece by many today, although upon its release, reception was more frigid. But if you are a fan of Kubrick and his filmography, I will tell you that Barry Lyndon was filmed in between A Clockwork Orange and The Shining, to give you a frame of reference. The synopsis from IMDb tells us that in the 18th century, in a small village in Ireland, Redmond Barry, played by Ryan O'Neal, is a young farm boy in love with his cousin Nora Brady, played by Gay Hamilton. When Nora gets engaged to British Captain John Quinn, Barry challenges him to a duel of pistols. He wins and escapes to Dublin, but is robbed on the road. Without an alternative, Barry joins the British Army to fight in the 7 Years' War. He deserts and is forced to join the Prussian army, where he saves the life of his captain and becomes his protege and spy of Irish gambler Chevalier de Balibari. He helps the Chevalier and becomes his associate until he decides to marry the wealthy Lady Lyndon. They move to England, and Barry, in his obsession of nobility, dissipates her fortune and makes a dangerous and revengeful enemy. The tagline of the movie is, "At long last, Redmond Barry becomes a gentleman," and that was his tragedy. The film is split into two sections with a brief epilogue. Part 1, titled By What Means Redmond Barry Acquired the Style and Title of Barry Lyndon, and Part 2, containing an account of the misfortunes and disasters which befell Barry Lyndon. So, Marc, I will now hand it over to you to kick us off, telling us, as always, why you picked this movie and just your initial thoughts to whet our palate.
So I didn't pick the 70s. So when it was assigned to me, at first I was panicking. Oh, 70s, I wasn't even alive. But I quickly realized that I actually did have a movie written on my list that I would just mention to you guys and we would all watch together as a normal episode. So I'm glad I held on to it. But yeah, Barry Lyndon was for a while now, and the reason why I came to it was I enjoy movies from like good directors. So if a director has a good track record, I tend to just follow them. If I see their name on it, boom, I'm in. You got Spielberg, Tarantino. I mean, those are just two quick right off the top. So Kubrick, he an awesome track record. So I decided to search like what is his best movie? What do people consider his best movie? I haven't seen many of his movies, but I've seen a couple. I've seen all the popular ones. Um, so when I saw that Barry Lyndon was his, I mean that was labeled his best movie, I couldn't fathom why a period piece that's over 3 hours long would be his claim to fame. Um, so with that, I'll get right into my hot take. Um, I understand why this is his best movie. I was incredibly gripped by the story, and I thought it flowed so well that even though it was 3 hours long, it didn't seem like overbearing. It wasn't a chore to sit through this movie. Um, I highly enjoyed the way the music played into things, which I'll get into later. But yeah, I was overall very happy about this selection. Two.
Mm, mm. um, yeah, I will add just to what you were saying at the start of that when you got the 70s and how, well, only one of us was briefly alive during the 70s, and that is the man that is going to go next.
Oh, do I have to
Tell
go
us.
next? I thought I was gonna go last.
Oh,
Okay.
you can go. I can go
Yes, I'd rather go last.
after I came up with that clever
Yeah,
introduction right on the spot.
It was great. It was brilliant.
Okay.
not
All
good
right.
enough.
Right. All right. So I very much enjoyed the movie. Is it the greatest movie ever made? No, but it was enjoyable. It's got profound things to say, and to kind of add to what Mark was saying, in my opinion, it serves as yet another entry into the Kubrick canon that affirms that he is on the Mount Rushmore of greatest all time directors, if not the single greatest and most important director ever. I thought Barry Lyndon was beautifully done, and it screams of authenticity to the era that it is depicting. Costumes, lighting, set pieces are all done with an uncompromising commitment to authenticity, at least to the director's vision of it. I think all the performances were stellar and elevate the epic story as it crescendos and descends moment by moment, balancing comedy, tragedy, irony, cleverness, cruelty, sympathy, and chance. Like Mark said, at a runtime of 3 hours and 5 minutes, it's a long movie, which requires some adjustment to our short attention spans that are driven by instantaneous gratification. Um, as we adapt to the slow, unhurried unfolding of characters and events. When the movie started off, it was a little bit confusing as you're just trying to gather, sort of your surroundings and the setting and like the music, everything. You're taking it all in. It develops a little bit slowly, and it requires true patience and commitment from the audience. Um, in reference to also the style with the narration, the chapter format that's broken up, and just the overall pacing. However, once you are in it and you're caught up and you're just following now the story, the characters, and the events which engulf Redmond Barry / Barry Lyndon, um, or the circumstances that he creates. I found it incredibly intriguing, interesting, and fascinating. Ultimately, it was a fun and sad ride as you see this character take advantage of every opportunity to elevate his social status, even if it means lying, cheating, and taking advantage. But ultimately, dooming his own fate through his own ignorance. As the narrator at one point describes, that Barry had the skills to acquire wealth, but not to manage it and keep it, along with his inability to appreciate and be satisfied with all the good fortune that he was able to acquire it. So, yeah, I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, Kevin, let's
Okay.
hear it.
Okay. So I know I've been recently acting like a show pony with my opinions of movies made in the 70s, with some like slightly bombastic opinions. So for this movie, I decided to center myself and remove the trailer from my mind. I took a deep breath, and when Marc picked this movie, I was generally curious because it was a Stanley Kubrick movie I had never heard about. And as I make my home here on this lone island that I will be on, to me, I don't know where really to start. I try to place my mind back in the era, seeing this as someone in the 70s would have. I don't know if it was an incestual relationship to start off with, which somehow isn't even the worst relationship we had reviewed in this podcast. I personally, again, hearing what y'all said, I'm like, and guess what? When I read up on this movie, everyone in the world agrees with you, so I am definitely on this island alone. I thought the story dragged. I did not like the main character. I didn't root for him. I didn't feel bad for him. The only character I actually grew to have any like sort of like interest in was the stepson. I forgot what his name was. Lord Barrington.
Lord
Bullington.
Bullington.
Yes. I did like him even as a kid. I'm like, all right, I enjoyed him. The narrator was in the beginning entertaining. He was kind of funny with his like and Redmond's dad, but he died. I'm like, okay, I could dig it. But then the narrator just kept going on, and he was either informing us what was going on or he was spoiling what was about to happen. And I believe the narrator had probably the second most dialogue in the whole movie. I personally didn't. I personally grew tired of the narrator. I didn't like the dialogue. I did struggle to make it through this movie. The war scenes, to me, sometimes they would look like a PBS reenactment of a war. And again, I know this was the 70s. It wasn't. It's not now, but it may be because we just got through watching All Quiet on the Western Front. So I know it's not fair to this movie, but I was like, oh, that was a gritty movie. This did not feel any of it. We even got an intermission, which at one point I thought was a bold move because I was like, man, do I want to continue? I was like, I can run for the door right now. A lot of things in this movie, to me, defied logic and reason, but it could have all been saved by a good, if not great, ending. But I don't think we even got that. We got an ending that sputtered to the finish line, and then a final scene or a final shot that just says epilogue and tells us something. Because of course it would. This movie was all about telling and not showing what was going on. I thought it was filmed well. When I looked into it, I could appreciate it for the technical aspects that pushed movie making forward a bit. But I know the 70s did produce some good movies, even though I like to joke that it's the worst. But to me, this isn't it. And apparently I am by myself because I hear y'all loved it. Everything I read about it, I'm like, man, I have missed something. And that's my take on it.
First question.
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of just want to sign off now.
What time of the day did you watch this in?
Okay, so
And what was your state of mind going into
How many
it?
times did you have to come back to this
I was gonna say what time of day or what times of day, because I did have to come back because it was like I said, I tried watching it during the day after the girls went to school, so I was bright awake. I went into it with a positive mindset. I was like, you know what? I know I was joking. Let's get it out. I didn't like the trailer much, but I was like, let's remove that. Let me give it a fair shake because that's what we should do. And at no point when I had to come revisit it that I just wasn't enthralled. Like again, when it got to the stepson stuff, it started picking up when they skipped 1 year and then another year, and we only know that because the narrator said, hey, it's 1 year later they got married. They talked for a couple of sentences. Oh, another year later, another year passed. they had a baby. I'm like, okay, cool. 2 years passed. Thanks for telling me that, dude. I just didn't. I did not like. And by all points, by the way, it says upon review, like reviewing and reviewing, it grows on you and gets better. I just don't think I will ever see this movie again.
Mm. All right. Well, you've given us lots there to work with. So let me try to go back to some of the comments that you made, and let's dig in a little bit further. For starters, I will say that I don't think I did not get the sense that you're supposed to like Barry Lyndon.
Correct.
I think that there's many things about him that you can sympathize with, but he was definitely, I mean, I don't even think he was an anti-hero because there was no hero component to him at all, except for the one truly kind of selfless thing that he did, which was in the duel with Lord Bullington when he fired into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like throughout the film, it really gives you um, a perspective into just the many layers of this individual that I never felt like, oh, I mean, yeah, I never really felt like I liked him. I mean, at times he was charming, at times, he was maybe courageous and things like that, but really pretty much throughout, he was not a person that you would look up to or model, or he had none really of those characteristics.
But
He was a con artist at the end of the day.
no,
Yeah.
to me, even as like the main character, it wasn't that I admire. I thought I was supposed to admire him. I didn't even care about his comeuppance. You know what I mean? Like
But you're not supposed to. Like everything that he's doing is he's just taking advantage of the situation that he's in. You're not supposed to be like, "Oh man, good job."
well, no, not even that. Like even when I thought when he was being dastardly and he was doing this stuff, I'm like, I was so uninvested in Raymond was Raymond
Re-
Redmond.
Redmond Barry.
Redmond Barry. I was so
Bruh,
uninvested.
I'm starting to think you didn't even finish this movie, bro.
Oh no, trust me.
He
They
just
said
read
his,
I made
bro,
it.
they said his name multiple times.
No,
he
because
just he
You're
just read the
struggling.
Wikipedia article.
Raymond Barry,
listen, but like it just
Redbone Barry.
trust me. By the way, I took more notes on this movie than I've taken on any movie. It's like 4
Bro,
pages of notes.
I haven't seen any of your notes, so none of that means
I have
anything
like
to me.
4 pages of, you know what I mean?
Bro,
I even wrote,
you could have used a whole Trapper Keeper full of
dude,
papers, bro.
I
I
even
don't
wrote,
care.
dude, they're John Woo with these pigeons in the final duel, and those pigeons wouldn't shut up. They just kept going in the final duel. So I watched it, and I didn't want to finish it, but I was like, I'm going to finish it because we have to make it through this. And
But I think it's hilarious that you actually enjoyed the stepson because I hated him. I hated his character. I think everything that he did was over dramatic and overacting. So the fact that you're saying that you enjoyed him, I was just like, what is happening right now? Like I feel like I'm in Barzaro land.
That's how I felt when both of you were talking and praising this movie. I'm like, I don't know. Like we watch different movies, but like I like the kid standing up to him and taking his whooping, standing up to him again and taking his whooping. Oh my god, I enjoyed all that parts of it.
No, I agree. I liked Lord Bullington. I understand. I think through the circumstances, I understood why he was the way that he was.
Oh no, 100%. I just for some reason I just didn't like that actor.
Okay.
I didn't like the faces he was like
Yeah.
that duel when they're like, cock your gun and get ready. He made like a face and he just
Yeah.
cocked him like what is he doing? So it's just the way he acted those scenes that he was in. I just didn't like his character itself. I totally understood it, but I can give you that the first like 30 minutes were slow, but after that, I mean, it was just chugging along.
Yeah.
This I so I don't know how much struggling you had to do with the pacing of the story, outside of learning how he became Barry Lyndon. I mean, it kind of took off from there.
I mean, I could see it, because I think at one point, and I agree exactly, like that beginning, whether it was 15, 20, 30 minutes, just while the everything's being set up,
Hmm.
it was slow. I got a lot of Princess Bride vibes. I
Yeah.
kind of feel like that movie was probably partly influenced by the scenery and the way that Barry Lyndon was shot. Probably a
Yeah.
lot of movies have been, but I think for Mark and I, there was something about the character that kind of hooked us. And at that point, I was, committed, and I was like, all right, I want to see how all this unfolds for this guy and where this is going. But I could see, I mean, like the part where he basically for the first time meets um I forget her name, the character that he eventually marries, Lord Bullington's mom.
Lady
They're just,
Lyndon.
yeah, Lady Lyndon, thank you. They're just sitting at a table, and there's not no real dialogue. They're just like looking at each other in the candlelight. So I could see how, if you haven't been gripped or hooked by the character and the story, then there's scenes that are, again, just a different pace, a different, than what we're used to. And so it might seem slow or drag, whereas that just wasn't really my experience, because I it was kind of like a something similar to kind of like what Quentin Tarantino um captured in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, right? Where you're, I remember how Mark described it to me after like the first time I saw the movie, and I wasn't sure how I felt about it. Mark was like, dude, it was awesome. You're like living with these characters for like 3 days or whatever. And then I rewatched it, and I was like, oh yeah, it was awesome. I actually loved it. This was the same. It was like now you were in there with
Hmm.
Barry, through all these things. And not only were the events interesting, but for me, which maybe I'll get into now or later, but it was this question, right, that kept being thrown at us. At least what I felt was like, is Barry, is he in control of his destiny, or is he just a victim of circumstance? Like which one is it?
100% the latter, bro. So I take it back. I take it all the way back to the beginning, and I know Kevin mentioned incest, but I we don't know what level of cousin this woman is, right? She could be third cousin, fourth cousin, whatever. But if you watch that scene, he is like he okay, so for those who haven't seen it, so there's a scene where he's with his cousin. She decides to play a game where she takes a scarf off her neck and makes him close his eyes, and she tucks it between her breasts so far down that he has to reach in, and she says, I've hidden something on, or I've hidden the scarf on me, and I want you to find it. He doesn't even attempt to play the game. He's like, I can't find it. So he's already like, they made it known that he's not interested in this. Like this is taboo for him. And he says multiple times, I don't know, I don't know. And she said, well, if you don't know, I'm gonna be mad. And he kept saying, I don't know. So like he knew the consequences of saying no, and he still did it. And she grabbed his hand and said, okay, I'll give you a hint, and shoves it down her bosom. Like at that point, if you're however age he is, and I mean obviously he's got hormones racing through him. I mean, he probably has an instant boner as soon as he does that, or as soon as she does that. So like I understand the whole incest thing is kind of weird, but it's the 70s. Like that far crazier things are happening around in this era. So watching a cousin, lust after another cousin, it's like, at least they're not brother and sister. Um, but
Well,
he fought it.
the movies in the 70s, but it's depicting, what is it, like the 1700s or
Yeah,
something?
Yeah,
1700.
something like that. Something like that. So like, these things are just they're not unheard of. So it's not hard for me to realize this, but I also fall on the fact that Lyndon or Barry, he wasn't about that life, you know, but she forced it, and all of a sudden he's like, holy smokes, like I'm touching breasts, this is amazing. And now his just horniness kicks in. So he's just fueled by this, and she's just pulling, dragging him along, you know, just keeping him going. And so I just took it as, oh, this guy is just being played by this girl who's obviously older, and she knows what she's doing, you know. So it wasn't that hard for me to get on board with it, because he did say no, you know, and for her, no was not no. She forced his hand, literally.
Yeah, but it wasn't like I didn't. It wasn't like a no of like no, this isn't right. It was like a no of like, hey,
I don't want to play this
I'm
game.
I'm inexperienced and I'm trembling. I don't know how to behave around a woman, so just kind of take the reins and let me have my way with if he was being coy, I took
But
it as
I don't know. But if he was being coy, then he wouldn't have been trembling. You
But
see what I'm saying? Like
but
if you're being coy, you're like, oh, I know what I'm doing, but I'm not
but
really nervous about it.
but the point I was making, like incestual, doesn't have to be just Barry towards Nora. It was Nora towards Barry. Depending on whoever was doing it, that's why I said it was incestual. It was like just between them two and their cousin. Like I agree
But
with Juan, where I just thought
she's
he
not
was
even a
more.
main character.
I
Why are you
know, but
worried about her?
no, but it's still. I was referring to the incestual relationship. You know what I mean? That started going on there,
It
and
was the first 30 minutes, though.
I know. Well, guess what? That was setting my dinner table right there that I was going to watch. I was like, okay, and that's why I just mentioned it because like it was like again, it's also not the worst relationship we reviewed. I also thought like Juan did it's not that he was denying it; he was just scared. It was his first time probably touching a girl.
yeah, and she was very hoish. So, um,
Well, obviously, as
but
soon as John Quinn came around with them badass moves, I mean, she was on to the next one.
bro, and that I thought
He wasn't the
there
biggest
was
hoe in the movie either. But anyway.
there was something so funny about that first duel that he had with the captain
Yeah,
John,
yeah.
which is like all anybody in the family was concerned about was those $1,500 per year. And as soon as Barry wins the duel and shoots him, they're like, Barry, you idiot. You just cost us $1,500. Meanwhile, the guy's like writhing in pain.
Guys, I was gonna die. You're more worried about 1,500 a year, a year, not even a month, a year.
But see, my take on it was that probably closer to, yeah, I guess you could draw a line and pick a side again as far as that argument of circumstance or him actually controlling his destiny. I mean, I kind of felt like it was both, and um but what I like too is that again you see um kind of what made him the way that he is, especially with the death of his father. And then it kind of starts off with his mom as like this sort of when you see her initially, you're like, oh man, she raised this child on her own. She's a strong kind of woman. um but then you find out later on she's actually like manipulative and controlling and deceptive, and also like um because she's the one that ultimately um, convinces Barry that he needs to, even though he's already married and lives in a mansion and has basically a life way beyond what he should have ever had. She instills this fear in him that it's not his fortune, it's his wife's fortune, and if something happens to her, it's all going to go to her son, and he's going to be left in poverty, along with his son, because so he's in a marriage with Lady Lyndon, who who already had a son. So that's Lord Bullington. But then they have her and Barry have a son together, and I did find myself even my opinion of Barry kind of shifting and changing throughout the movie. Um, whereas, so like, yeah, during that time, I don't know, did you, I don't know if my perception of this was accurate or if I missed something, but did you guys feel also like, after Barry got married and dude, when he blows the smoke in her face in that carriage, it was like, what a douchebag. Um, but at that point,
Yes.
he was really feeling himself,
Yeah.
because the only thing he ever really had going for him was like his looks, and that's really what kind of opened the door for him in everything was like his good looks,
Hmm.
until he met the Chevalier who actually taught him how to con and gave him some smarts. But anyway, when he gets caught cheating on his wife, and then she's in the bathtub and he comes and like um demonstrates some remorse and says I'm sorry, like after that I felt like he really tried
Yeah.
to like you're right, he was really like a good, because they never show him cheating again after that, right?
Right. No, no, there was just that one scene where I'm assuming it's like a brothel or something, and he's making out with the naked ladies. After that, there was nothing else. I didn't see him talking to anyone, engaging with anyone. It was just between him and his stepson and real son.
Yeah, so like I felt at that point where I was like kind of rooting for him, and I my opinion of him did kind of change because I was like, oh man, I guess he really was sorry, and he really does want to work on his marriage. And then of course, I mean, the best thing that he had for him was like he was a really good dad, like to his son. Like he was an exception, like he it felt like for that time, for that era, like he was an exceptionally good dad, who like was really good to his son and spent time with them and had fun, and unfortunately spoiled him a little bit too much. But
I I laughed at those scenes because I kind of put myself into that. I'm like, yo, that's kind of how I am with Apollos. Like, I feel like he can do no wrong. I'm gonna give him whatever he wants. I'm always hugging and kissing on him. Um, so it kind of made me go, oh man, I gotta make sure I don't let him get away with murder.
yeah, keep him away from the horses.
Yeah, like, but I feel like I'm like, hey, don't. I feel like he's gonna go and do it, and I don't know if it's because I'm so affectionate with him, and you know, I don't know, but that scene was kind of like, oh man, it was a little too real for me because I saw myself and in those scenes.
Dude, it was tough. It got really sad, really sad. um the saddest scenes for me, I think, were that one when like his son is on his deathbed.
Yeah.
um so yeah, spoiler alert. So
It's a hey, it's all right if you're watching the movie. The narrator spoils it too before it happens.
oh, you hush.
He does. He
uh,
says, "Oh, and he'll die childless." I was like, "Oh, great! Now he's gonna die," and that's all I was waiting for. I was like, "How's he gonna die?"
No, he was saying that Barry preferred to be, and he mentioned all those things.
No, it says that Destiny had chosen that he would die alone, he would die penniless and childless, and I was like, "Oh, great! Now his son's gonna die," and it's all I was
Uh,
waiting for. It literally said it.
whatever.
so yeah,
It's like
so it's like
the
his
narrator's giving out spoilers, man.
Who
it's like
cares though? Like you're watching it happen. Like it's not a spoiler if it happens in 5 minutes.
well, and because it's as it's happening throughout the story, it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of like teasing
But
what
okay,
happens
I
but
next.
will I
before
will say
before he says that, you watch a clip of him being slammed to the ground by the horse. Like, what are you expecting him to go like, "Oh, papa, I'm better now"? Like, come on, like it's such a nitpicking thing. It's
well,
it's kind of funny.
no, first of all, I was gonna say no. The whole death stuff is my like was really well done, but it when the narrator says that isn't when the horse slam. It happens before any of that happens, when everything's still going good, before we even think that the son's going to die.
Yeah, that's how I remember it. But that's what I'm saying. Like for me, it was just like I was okay with it. It's like a tease.
Yeah.
But then you're like, okay, well, he's here at point C, so I know that's coming up, at point D or point E. But how is that gonna happen? And so there was still dramatic tension.
No,
It wasn't.
and no, and
If you were surprised by that, then come on, man.
No,
I don't know what.
I did believe it built tension, but the minute he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get him this horse," I'm like, "Don't go by the horse." I'm like, "He's gonna go by the horse and die."
Well,
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
of
So then
course.
he's not spoiling anything for you. That's why I'm
What
wondering
do you
why
mean?
you're
It spoiled it
nitpicking
for
on
me.
that.
You can't tell me you didn't spoil anything for me.
You just said that when he bought the horse, you thought something bad was going to happen.
Yeah, because
And that happened.
because
but
it was
you're upset because
no.
the narrator said,
I
it
thought
just
something
doesn't
was
make
going to
sense.
happen because the narrator, like 15 minutes earlier, 10 minutes earlier, had said he's going to die childless. That's why.
Kevin, you just said when he went through the whole process of getting the horse.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that the son was going to die if the narrator hadn't mentioned he was going to die
I didn't say
childless.
die, but you said that something bad was going to happen.
No, I thought he was going to die like once the horse was bought. Like
we all knew he was going to die.
So exactly, if you once the horse was bought, you knew that something bad was going to happen. What does it matter that someone told you 5 seconds before it actually happened?
It wasn't. It's because I would have liked to have been surprised. Listen,
but it's not a surprise. You already said you knew what was coming. You expected it.
Okay, let me talk to Juan. Juan, apparently, like I said, I wouldn't have expected anything had I not been told by the narrator that this child was going to die.
Yes. I'm not. You don't convince me because you're always trying to predict everything that happens in every movie. So you would have still suspected it and not have been as surprised as you want to lead us to believe that you would be. But the whole point is you didn't like the narrator and the device of the narrator, and how much sort of influence or just how big a part he had in the story.
And I think the narrator, to me, like in the book, the narrator is actually told, the narration is told from the perspective of Barry, and I think that would have added a little bit more to okay to me if it was the narrator from his point of view, because it wasn't this omniscient guy who just kept chiming in stuff.
But why? You just said you didn't like Barry Lyndon. You didn't like his character. You didn't root for him. You didn't. So why would you all of a sudden be okay with hearing him talk about his story? That doesn't make sense. You didn't like him.
Well, we can't. That's just speculation. You don't know how different the movie would have been if that had been the narration, the point of view of the narrator, or if there would have been a narrator at all.
Take the whole movie as a whole and turn around and put Barry Lyndon as the narrator. All of a sudden, you're okay with it? No, of course not. He's everything that he did. He was never a good guy. The only time he had some silver lining is when he was interacting with his son. Outside of that, he was taking advantage of anytime he can. Like, he played both sides. He was all over the place. He was just worried about himself and how he can, get the better end of it. So that's what I don't understand. Like, all of a sudden, if he's a narrator, you're okay with it?
I never said. I said I probably would have liked, but like Juan said, we don't know. I'm basically what I'm trying to say is if we had something that wasn't what we had, I may have been better with it.
Well, no, what I find, I guess, most difficult about about your perspective is, like, for example, Marc just said that there was nothing redeemable, I guess, about Barry except for his relationship with his son. But like I agree to an extent, but then, for example, like, I look at his relationship with Lord Bullington, and in one sense, I think it was a constant reminder to him of what he wasn't, right? Because that's why he was named Lord Bullington, and they kept referring to him as that. Mm-hmm. That's what he was, and that's what Barry wasn't, and so that's what Barry was trying to be. But then also, like, I'm not so sure that Barry wasn't trying as best as he could or as best as he knew how to be a good father to Lord Bullington. Because even though, well, from our perspective, it's easy to say, like, oh, he's doing terribly and making all the wrong choices, and he's only driving Lord Bullington further away from him. But Barry Redmond didn't have a father, and and I'm sure to him it made sense. Like, all right, I'm going to treat him like my son. I'm going to discipline him, and his father's dead, so now I got to be the father. Like, he doesn't know any better. Like, all right, you're not his real father. Don't try to be his real father. Like, even his wife, referred to Barry as the son's father. So you understand, like, Lord Bullington's resentment of all of that. But then again, trying to put myself in that character's shoes, while from me, I'm like, yeah, you did all the wrong things. Like, I'm not so sure that he understood in the moment that he was doing all the wrong things. Like, he might have thought that he was doing best by him by taking the actions that he did. So that level of like depth and those layers to the character throughout the whole film are ultimately what made it so fascinating for me, that it wasn't so easy to just judge this guy. You had to take so many different things into consideration, which made it such a good character piece and such a good story.
Yeah.
So I guess what's confounding to me is like how you missed all that, I guess, or didn't see it, or refused to see it, I guess.
I think there was even a point. I don't know if he said it exactly, but Lord Bullingdon mentioned that, like, I'm not your son. Like, everyone's forgetting that my father was Charles Lyndon.
Yeah,
So I'm not a red. I'm a Lyndon. So, and he mentioned. I remember that he mentioned that at
yeah.
one point. I don't
Oh
remember
yeah,
what point it was,
it was a
but
powerful scene.
I think that was right
yeah,
before his first beating.
maybe. But like that was like that's true. Like, you're watching this interaction between someone who has to father a child that he didn't actually create and father, but like a child who has to deal with someone who isn't his father, and they're just butting heads. Um, at one point, I noticed that what was his son's name? I forgot, but the real son,
Brian,
was it Ryan?
Brian, I believe.
Brian,
Brian,
maybe, whatever.
I
But
thought it was
anyways,
like Charlie.
his real son, he calls Lord Bullingdon, calls him bully, and he
Mm-hmm.
referenced him as bully.
Mm.
So that made me think, well, is this kid being like, and obviously that interaction they had where he kept telling him to be quiet, and I'm studying and I'm doing what I got to do. Like, it shows that there's some friction between those two. And when he attacks the younger one, and Barry comes in, he's like, I told you not to touch him ever again, as he's whipping him. I mean, that was just like that that added more to it. Like, there's obviously something going on here. Um, which makes me think that while Kevin had this movie broken down into 17 pieces because he couldn't watch it as a whole, I feel like he missed something.
Well, I missed something because I think Mark said the correct name, which is Bullingdon, and I've been saying Bullington.
No, that's all right. Well,
Yeah,
I noticed when that, because I always have subtitles on, so
yeah,
I had to rewind it because I was like, did he say that? And he calls him bully
yeah,
when they're sitting in the I won't say classroom, but they were sitting in a room together. It's just them two, and they're working.
Yeah, the two desks.
And yeah, and he calls him bully, and that's how he was, like, he acknowledged that
yeah.
he was called bully, and he responded. So I
Well,
was made me think, well, is there friction between those two as well?
yeah. And then maybe this is because I have like I mean, my brother is technically like my half brother.
Hmm.
From we have different fathers. So, and
A
also
brother from the same mother.
yeah,
Typical.
and also we there's a lot of years between us. We're like 20 years apart.
Yeah,
So
a whole lot of years.
interesting enough, even though that interaction, there was a sense of conflict. I didn't feel that there was anything but affection between them, because
Because he was very patient.
He was patient, and like it's like no matter what he felt about Redmond, like that's his brother
Yeah,
because they have the same mother.
yeah,
So I think it was just mainly like just the age difference of like, all right, here's this little 7-year-old kid being annoying.
yeah.
Um, but
He's
I
the one that he attacked Bullingdon. He's the one that said, "Oh, that's my pencil," and jumped at him and lunged
yeah,
at him.
yeah,
He started that whole quarrel.
right, right, and but then I think it just showed Redmond's ignorance and bias to just walk into the room and immediately side with his 7-year-old son,
Yeah.
instead of taking Lord Bullingdon into consideration. I agree with you about the actor. I think he had a very punchable face, Lord Bullingdon, but I really liked the character. And I thought, again, that scene where his wife is playing piano or, well, his mom is playing piano and they're doing like this whole recital for all of these guests that they're hosting at their home, and Barry is right there front row just like enjoying it, taking it all in, and then Lord Bullingdon and his little brother come in, and those shoes are just stomping all over that wooden floor. And then I was not expecting Barry to just freaking lunge on him and like try to start. But I also I was surprised, like, because I feel like maybe maybe it showed like that societal level of class. Like I was like, why are they so surprised? Like I feel like physical punishment would have been more common
Hmm.
back then. Like I was surprised that
I,
like all the people that were there were so shocked.
I just don't think you do it in public.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially like
To that degree, I mean, that was straight up fisticuffs.
yeah,
There was like 20 people trying to hold him back.
yeah, yeah,
So about that, I'm glad you brought that scene up because that scene stood for me. You know why? It's for a stupid reason. So when the fight happened and they're fighting, do you remember do you remember a person coming into the scene to try and break it up?
Any slides?
He does. You remember that, right?
Yeah.
So for our listeners, I want you to close your eyes, right? If you've seen this movie and you remember that scene, that person that comes sliding in, that's exactly how Kevin bowls. Yo, I rewind it. I rewound that so many times because the way he comes sliding in, I'm like, yo, all he's missing is a bowl and 10 pins because that's
Oh
Kevin right
my!
there.
I can't even disagree.
Yeah, the key came in feet first. I'm like, oh my god, what is he doing, bro? Ah, that was so good. I literally wrote that down. I said that's exactly how Kevin bowls. But
no,
I mean,
yeah,
what were you gonna say?
no, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I thought that scene was pivotal, man, because that shifted the whole movie, and I think that's how the second act started. No, was him or his sons interacting, and then he comes and reprimands the stepson, and he's like, "You're never gonna touch me again, or I'll kill you." And then the younger son comes clopping down with the shoes, and obviously it's intentional, because Bullingdon is barefoot, so he knew what he was doing,
Yeah,
and they have a big fight. So like that's how the whole I remember. I think I remember that's how the whole second act started.
yeah,
Um, but I
could have
just
been, yeah,
I thought it was a great segue because while we see him kind of falling into dumb luck, I don't think he was a lucky person. I know they kind of mentioned that he's got this luck about him. He's a gambler or whatnot. I just feel like he was presented with the opportunity. He just took it. For me, that's I don't consider that lucky.
yeah. I think there's a strong case to be made for that for sure. What why I thought that scene was also so pivotal and monumental was because it really, for me, it showed like the 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 the, the level of just the how fed up and like Bullingdon was at that
Hmm.
point, because he was just past the point of even caring about embarrassing his mom or doing this all in public or how pissed Barry was going to be. Like, he just gave zero F's at that point, and he was like, I'm just trying to stir the pot, create chaos, or get out of here. But it just showed like that was, the camel's back had been broken. And even though at first it seemed kind of like a silly thing to do, but for me, it really showed the depth of this character of like, I've enough is enough, bro. It's time for action.
Yeah, and
um
the
af-
poor mom was on the she was on the blunt end of everything.
yeah, I know she was a, but
Lady
that
Lyndon.
but at the end of it, but also at least when it comes to Lord Bullingdon and even her marriage, to Barry, like, there's a lot of blame there to be thrown at her too,
Hmm.
because she also didn't intercede. It didn't seem like she interceded between Barry and Lord Bullingdon. And she always seemed to side with Barry whenever there was
Yeah,
a conflict between him and her son. So she also had a lot of insult and injury in those things toward Lord Bullingdon.
yeah. I think her silence was more golden than anything because she didn't really do anything.
Yeah,
And that last scene where they're paying out the debts, and they get to Barry's debt, and it's the 500 a year, and she, all of a sudden she just stares into space. I'm like, I don't know if she's happy about this, if she's sad, like if
right.
this is a weight off her shoulder. Like I really couldn't read her. And then he Bullingdon kind of just puts the next one in front of her, like, all right, let's keep going. And then she just starts signing again. Um, her character was very, very, very weird because I thought the whole infidelity was going to play a part, but it was just kind of like, oh, I caught him cheating and he came and apologized and we're good now. Um,
Yeah.
so that was weird.
Well, and her and Barry started through infidelity.
Right, right.
Don't forget this dude. That old man was a gangster, bro. He just confronted Barry. I was like, bro, I know what you're doing. In that old, language type of feel, he was just like, bro, I ain't no fool. I know what's going on.
Mama
That,
didn't raise no fool.
that
And
man
he was,
said he'd rather be a cuckold than a fool.
yeah, in so many words, like he couldn't, but he was like, why, yeah, yada. Yeah, he was winding it up. But then,
and then and then he dies shortly after.
yeah, um, another scene. First, yeah, I really like again, Kubrick was just such a such a brilliant, you know, a storyteller, able to sort of dictate and control so many aspects of his films. So when you look at the lighting and the use of, this was the only thing I had ever heard about this movie was from uh, different videos that I've seen on YouTube where they show this scene in different countdowns about films or whatever, and they always show like the candles. And I think it's especially like the scene where Barry meets Lady Lyndon. But the use of candles and natural lighting was actually kind of groundbreaking from stuff that I read. But back to Lady Lyndon, I was gonna say, for I read something that, like, for as significant a role as she had in this film, I think she said like less than 100 words of she had like less than 100 words of dialogue.
Yeah.
But yeah, also a very very layered character.
Yeah, I mean she said everything she needs to with her eyes.
Yeah, yeah,
What one thing that really stood out for me, and just kind of I think every time I heard it I was like, "Oh snap." So there's this piece of music that it was just like strings. I don't know what kind of instrument it was, but maybe it was a bunch of violins or whatever, but there was this music that would play, and anytime, like in the first half of the movie, it would happen when his dumb luck was paying off for him, you know? So it kind of felt triumphant. The music was like, oh man, this guy is pulling this off, right? And then we get into the second half where he's coming down and he's spiraling out of control. That same music, they were playing it in these scenes and it was haunting.
Yeah.
And for me, that just like I was like, holy smoke. I went from thinking that this music was like, man, we're watching this guy come up. And now he is like he's fumbling the bag, as what these kids call it now. And we're still hearing the same music, and now it's hitting me in a different way. Like I feel like, oh man, this is bad. Like even though I've heard this music before and it was all for good, this is clearly bad and it's hitting me. It was haunting. And even into the bitter end, that music was playing when they were signing off on the debts, and that music was playing. I was just I was really taken back by that. How that little score of those violins or whatever it
Hmm.
was, the doom doom doom. I'm
Yeah.
doing it a disservice, but it was just that same music that was played throughout the music, not the background setting, but like this is a monumental scene and this is shifting us and it's progressing the story. It was that little score that went from feeling great to feeling bad. And I was blown away by it.
Yeah.
How that same music in a different scene transformed it.
Yeah. 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 The score played a big part in the movie. The music was also, like a character in and of itself. Um, I disagree with Kevin. I
Okay.
I was impressed by the battle scenes, and I did even I don't mind PBS battle scenes, or
Yeah.
reenactments.
But it's not
Uh,
even PBS. I really feel like that's how it was. That war is
yeah,
like
oh
just
yeah, no
march
doubt.
over to them, and when you get close enough, shoot. And the
Yeah, it
other
was
side's like,
crazy.
oh, they're just marching towards us. Like, great, let's shoot.
Yeah,
And some people are getting hit, or some people are not. Like,
yeah,
that's as dumb as that was. I mean, that's what war was, and
yeah,
I had no issue with that either. And I
yeah,
was actually like, I was kind of perturbed that that's what was the case. I'm like, yo, y'all are literally walking to your death,
yeah,
and you got drums playing, but you're still dying. So
yeah,
why? But I mean, that's war. That's that's not all quiet on the Western Front. This is
yeah.
just war in the 1700s.
Yeah, no, I thought that even to just the costumes, they didn't they felt authentic. The depictions of the battle, felt authentic. Again, I don't know that it was like exactly authentic, or again, if it was just the director creating a sense of authenticity, but it felt authentic, through those choices.
Well, I don't know if you noticed, but this was written, produced, and directed by
Yeah.
Kubrick. Um,
Adapted because it's based off a novel.
right.
Yeah.
No,
So
of course.
screenplay,
But
yeah.
they didn't say adapted; they say written. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna take what they said, written.
It was written for the
Um,
screen, is what it said.
right, and it is based off a book. I think it's like the thing of Barry Esquire or something like that.
The Luck of Barry Lyndon.
Something like that. Um, the book is written like it's kind of like an autobiography,
Hmm.
of this fictional character. Um, but yeah, I mean, he would and write it for the screen, and I thought it all vibed very well, and I think the soundtrack itself really helped because even when that pivotal music isn't playing, you still have that light music in the background that flowed with helped the scenes flow better. Um, but I just can't get over the fact that little 5 second, not even five, that 1 minute snippet of whatever that music was with the violins or cello or whatever it was strings. I know it was strings. And when you watch it again, or if you watch it for the first time, you'll immediately know what I'm talking about because it was throughout the whole movie,
Hmm.
and it really somehow it played a major part in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, so not only the music, which, um, Kubrick was such a, like a obsessive maniac, about storytelling and whatnot. So did like tons of research. Originally, he wanted to make a movie about Napoleon, like this, like a big epic about Napoleon.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I can't remember, it didn't work out. So he made this one. But both the music and a lot of the shots, I read, were like shots in the movie were actually meant to either resemble or actually even kind of depict, famous paintings from that era.
Oh,
Which,
100%.
yeah.
I could see that. There was a scene where he was fishing with his
Oh
sons
yeah.
in the
Hmm.
boat, and he just kept like, zooming out, and the wider it got, like the more I was just like, man, that's a great scene. And if you think about it, like you have these actors who probably like I don't want to say a mile away, but they're far away. By the time he finally zooms out completely, like they're far away, and you're in capturing all this scenery around them, and it was just a nice scene to watch. And he has that throughout the movie where as he's zooming out, like story is progressing and people are talking, and it's just weird that while he's doing that, it kind of engulfed me in the scene more.
Yeah, and it was also interesting. I want to say it was. I don't remember any other times, but I definitely remember it was. I think the battle when when he rescues that German or that Prussian guy when he lifts like the beam off of him that like fell
Yeah,
on him. There was a point in that scene where I think it used like where Kubrick used like a handheld camera to like move throughout that house or and like follow the action.
yeah.
Um, I was kind of surprised by that because I didn't think that was that commonly utilized in films back then in the 70s. But
This guy was recording from his phone before all of us.
him and his time machine. But
I
another
think that was
good.
Pottsdorf, right? Pottsdorf was the one that got.
Yeah, Pottsdorf. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. Another memorable scene was when him and the Chevalier made their escape, and he dressed like him to get into his coach, and he had the white makeup on, and the
Yeah,
guy didn't even come close to recognizing him.
which I thought was so funny because I think he was speaking English too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He was like, "But I have somewhere to be."
Yeah,
Yeah, and I thought that was pretty interesting because they're like, "Oh yeah, no, the Chevalier left the day before." So he was straight up playing both sides, man. Like
yeah,
he always had his best intention in mind.
yeah. And that was at one point where because he wasn't he wasn't the brightest crayon in the box, but
Who,
in
the
that
Chevalier or Barry Lyndon?
no Barry.
Oh yeah,
So it was in that series where he was playing both sides with the Prussian guys. I think his ignorance paid off because when he was like, "No, I haven't seen him do anything" or whatever, they were like, "Oh, they just believed him." They never really were very skeptical of his explanations.
but I like how they mentioned that. Like he gave them just enough that they wouldn't question it because
Yeah,
it feels like he's giving them detailed information.
yeah, yeah. And then, but then at the end, man, I mean, it was just sad to see him. Obviously his son dying was very sad, and again, that scene where the son's in his deathbed and he's asking him to retell, his made up story,
Yeah,
from battle, being a war hero, where they showed the scene of previously of him kind of being really animated and excited sharing that story and how much his child enjoyed it, and now he's like dying and asking him to do it, and he's telling it but he can't even get through it because he just breaks down. And then seeing him back home, with nothing, just with his mom and his freaking leg chopped off. Like, that sad, man.
Yeah. No, it was yeah. It was very well done.
And
I thought so.
so why do you think that he didn't kill Lord Bullingdon when he had the chance, man? That would have solved all his problems.
I think it goes back to the first scene that he had with John Quinn and how he was tricked into quote unquote killing Quinn and he really didn't do anything and they forced him to run off. I feel like he took that same scenario, was like, I'm gonna play this in my cards where I'm the winner and I'm gonna give this guy the chance to go and flee. Um but when he didn't take it, he was just like, what? I don't he wasn't expecting that. He was really expecting to be like, okay, well, since my gun didn't go off and this guy spared my life, I'm gonna go. Um that's kind of how I took it.
Well, and what's crazy about that too is that, like you said earlier, that you didn't believe that, the events of his life were, because of luck. But that actually was an instance where he was lucky. And because he didn't take advantage of his luck in that moment,
Yeah.
it cost him.
Was it?
Yeah.
I think he didn't take the shot because he just lost his son, and this is a kid who he did help raise, and he was gonna have to shoot this kid, and I think the death of his son played more into the fact that he didn't want to harm this other child, even though he was
Mhm.
more grown now.
Yeah, that whole scene was really awesome, actually. First, freaking Bullingdon not knowing how to, handle a gun and that shot going off, like that was so unexpected. And then when they're like, all right, well, since he fired into the ground, are you satisfied? And then he's like, no, I'm not satisfied.
Well, I think he looks at him and he gets angry again. He's like, "No, I'm not satisfied," because he remembers that the guy used to beat the crap out of him.
Oh, yeah, no, he certainly remembered like all of the injustices and insults and whatnot. So that was not going to be enough to satisfy him. But I think Barry was like, hey, uh, literally, it's worth a shot.
Yo, 100%.
All right. Well, as I don't want to disappoint anyone, I do have some fun facts.
Why would this be a disappointment?
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is a. What I mean is, I have them so that you're not disappointed.
Okay. The way you worded that was sounded like you guys are disappointed because I have fun facts.
No, no, I meant like it's a special episode, special series, but I'm not gonna leave you without fun facts.
But same old golden nuggets. I love it.
Okay, so fun fact number one, according to Ryan O'Neal, who played Barry Lyndon,
Right?
and other, this is documented in other uh, sources as well, but while they were filming in Ireland, Kubrick and his family were threatened by the IRA. They especially didn't like that he was using English actors. So they had to change locations, and Kubrick and his family escaped to England using fake names to get away.
What?
I think they were given 24 hours to leave, and he like left in 12. That was very nice story.
I'll give you 12. You got 24. I'll give you 12.
Mhm.
You know,
Also,
I will, before you continue, I will say kudos for me for introducing another Ireland movie, bro. This is season 2 is Ireland, baby. We need to take a trip to Ireland.
yeah, something about Ireland.
But by the way, I tagged Ireland in one of the posts I did, I think for the Wonder, and they hit me up. They're like, "Oh, we're in Ireland. Send us pictures." I'm like, "We're not in Ireland, man."
Definitely also always tag India, by the way,
Oh, I should.
as much as you can.
I
Yeah,
love
always.
our Indian fans.
Always. Um, all right. Did you recognize, you remember the guy, I think no, Graham, I think. Um yeah, Graham, the guy that like was the accountant.
Yeah.
Do you recognize him?
No.
You ever seen The Shining?
Yeah.
He plays the butler that's going down on the bear.
Oh.
Wow.
Mark liked
What?
that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
I didn't even. He looked really disheveled in this movie. Like every time
Well,
I saw him, he looked like he was
yeah,
just like, "All right, I just woke up. I gotta.
yeah,
Okay, here I am."
yeah. Well, he was an accountant for a person that was losing all their money. But
Right, right.
I when I saw it in the film, I was like, man, that guy looks familiar. Of course, in The Shining, he's like bald and he's in a butler suit.
I think
But
that's what kills it is that he's bald. Because
yeah,
this one, he's got a full head of hair.
yep, long hair. Yep. All right, this next one is
Another one.
unverified. But in order to provide as much light as possible in the candlelit scenes, Stanley Kubrick used custom-made candles. Each
Oh.
candle had 3 wicks instead of one and used a highly volatile wax. This resulted in the candles burning down very quickly, which is why many of the candles seen are so short.
Hmm. I would have never guessed that.
Like, I
Good.
thought you were gonna go with the lenses, but I was like, okay.
Yeah, that's a good one too. This also unverified, but
Another one.
supposedly this is Martin Scorsese's favorite Kubrick movie.
Hmm. I could see that.
Hmm
Scorsese is a bit of a snob when it comes to movies.
Um, this is also Stanley's second longest movie. Can any of you guess which one is longer?
Space Odyssey.
Longer than this one?
Yeah,
No. Is it Space Odyssey?
no.
Oh.
Oh.
Space Odyssey feels longer than this
Yeah,
one.
I was like,
This
I'm gonna say he did. Was it Pass of Glory? I'm gonna say Pass of Glory.
the answer is Spartacus, which I had
Oh,
no idea that Kubrick directed before watching this.
oh
really?
yeah. I've never seen it, but yeah, I've.
Well, when you do get
That,
around
that's
to
a
seeing
war.
it, be prepared because it's long.
Oh, it is long.
I
I would not
gotta.
have guessed that Kubrick did that one.
Yeah, I know. It's wild. All right, here's a Lord Bullingdon fact for you.
Oh
Another
jeez.
one.
The actor who played Lord Bullingdon, his name is Leon Vitali.
Uh huh.
After this movie, he went on to become Kubrick's personal assistant until his death.
That
Yeah,
was just his
so they
claim
were.
to fame, being
Well,
being his.
well, then I think even after Kubrick died, he was responsible for like restoring like his old movies and everything. He
Are
got.
these Kevin's fun facts?
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
It sounds like you're upset that you.
Maybe, maybe. He's stepping on my lines.
Another one.
But that's
Last one.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, personal assistant. So
You know,
clearly
he died
Kubrick
in
liked him.
2022.
Leon Vitali.
Leon. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And last but not least, Ryan O'Neal, who plays the title character Lyndon Barry,
Hmm.
who is who I had a suspicion and was confirmed is the father of Tatum O'Neal. He has a son, and he named his son Redmond.
Really?
Yeah,
Why would he do that?
I guess he's really fond of that character. I mean, I think aside from this movie, he never really became as famous or like as his acting career never really ended up uh, manifesting to the point of like at least how it was projected. But outside of this, his only really ever like really famous role was in the movie Love Story,
Yeah, that was really good.
which was a really famous movie from the 70s. I only know that movie because my mom was a big fan of it. She's mentioned it several times, and there's a famous line in it that says, "Love is never having to say you're sorry," which I don't agree with. Love means never having to say you're sorry.
It's having to say sorry often, every day,
But
once every hour.
if you're, yeah, that's the male perspective. But no, I mean, I mean, not only getting to work with Stanley Kubrick, but then, although while the movie came out, it wasn't received super well. Like
Yeah.
over time, obviously, it's become a very important film, which brings me to a final question for you guys before we go on to our ratings of the film.
hmm
But
hmm
as I was watching this, and as I was thinking of the other Stanley Kubrick movies that I've seen, from The Shining to 2001 to what's the
Clockwork.
what
Dr. Shivago?
Clockwork Orange, yeah. But no, the one about the bomb, what's that one called again? Dr.
Shivago?
No, man.
It's not Dr. Shivago. Why do I keep thinking it's Dr. Shivago?
The bomb.
Yeah,
The only the,
how I learned to love the bomb, or
Hold on, let me
is
see.
that Full Metal Jacket?
No,
no,
that's really
actually,
good too, by the way.
that's one I haven't seen that I need to
Oh,
watch.
I love you long
Oh
time.
man,
Doctor
yeah,
Strangelove. That's what it is.
Doctor
Saki.
Strangelove. Doctor
Doctor
Strangelove.
Oh, how I
Strangelove.
learned to love the atomic bomb.
Um, but as I was thinking about it, for me, I think in my book, he is the greatest director of all time. Both for the quality of movies. Oh, and I think I've seen Eyes Wide Shut, but I was, I was a little young at that time, and I don't remember it.
Yeah, you
I,
gotta watch it again.
I don't think I got it, but yeah, as I was saying, for the quality of the films, but also, I mean, for the quality on top of like how different they are. I mean, this was a period epic. Then he's done like satirical comedies. Then he's done horror. Then he did a war film. Like then he did like Spartacus and all these others. Like, man, how do you cover so many genres, and in all of them have like what some of the top films in that genre, like in
Right,
that category, and
right.
then have influenced so many people after that and so many films. Like, so for me, as I think, and I'm sure there's others that are also worthy of being in competition for it, but in my book, like from what I've seen, that I can judge, like to me, he's the goat.
Oh, throwing out the goat.
Yeah,
Mm. I mean, it's hard to dispute that. Cause like if you think about his most popular movies, like those movies are great. Just going off of that, Clockwork Orange, 2001, Full Metal Jacket, The Shining, like all those movies are great. But then if you keep looking, he has other movies that might not be as popular, like Barry Lyndon or Doctor Strangelove, and those movies are still good. And Spartacus, like I've heard Spartacus is great. I've never seen it, um, but I heard that it's phenomenal. So it's hard to dispute that.
yeah, and I mean, dude, he started in '51.
Yeah, yeah, it's a long time ago.
Crazy. Kevin, you wanna chime in on that, or are you good?
Well, no, he's good. I'm like, for me, I'm more Orson Welles and Akira Kurosawa as my favorites, but
Okay.
as a, but
Yeah.
like I said, it's just preference. Like, I wouldn't argue against somebody who said like they think he's the best. I'm like, okay, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say no. I'm like, it just comes down to preference at that point because they're in a
Yeah.
whole different stratosphere.
So would you put him, if not the GOAT, would you put him on Mount Rushmore?
Oh yeah, yeah, I would.
Mm.
I don't have a problem as long as I forget about this movie. But
We need to have a Mount Rushmore episode. Talk about who we consider our Mount Rushmore directors.
Oh, yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, we can do that.
now I'm thinking about my Mount Rushmore. Ooh,
Well, while you guys think about that, I will. It's not really much to my rating that we haven't already covered. Um, I would say. Oh, I was.
Wait! You're giving your rating first? I
Oh no
thought
no
you.
no! Sorry. You're right. It's yours. My bad.
Yeah, get out of here,
I
bro.
thought you guys were thinking about your Mount Rushmore. That's what I was gonna
Blasphemer.
say.
Well, I mean
But
that too, but
I will say, to kind of agree with something Kevin said in my closing here. Um, the narration did take me a little bit of time to get used to. Like at first or even halfway through, I was like, all right, it was just different. At the end of the day, it's part of the identity of this film. So I kind of, by the end of it, was just like, okay, that's what this movie is. But it was different. And so it was another thing that I kind of had to wrap my head around. And I would be curious to see what this movie would be like if it was like just straight up, um without the narration, just the story moving along. I would be curious.
it's a 4 hour movie.
I'm not saying that that would have been better or not, but it was just such an unconventional choice, that it was interesting. But that's my thoughts on it. But yeah, Mark, all yours.
Well, so for our new season, we are rating 1 to 5, and it's Little Jerry's, of course. And for the movie all watched together, which is Barry Lyndon, which was my pick for the 70s, I 100% would watch this again. I really enjoyed it. I didn't think it was that slow. I'll give you maybe the first 30 minutes after the whole cousin loving cousin thing. But once that kind of gets out of the way and he as in Barry Lyndon makes the decisions that he makes based off of that, it kind of spirals us into this, life of this guy who is encountering dumb luck and he's taking advantage of the opportunities that are handed to him. And finally that luck runs out and now instead of going up, he's going down. I thought it was great. I mean, it was pretty to watch. I want to say it was because it was remastered that it was so pretty to look at. But I mean, yeah, it was just all the shots were great. The music was great. The acting was great. Minus a couple like Bullingdon, who I didn't really care for, but his character as a whole obviously was monumental to the story. But I just didn't like the actor itself, so that's a minor gripe. I 100% will watch this again. I feel like this is something that I can easily play in the background when I want something to watch, but I don't want to fully invest. And I can just look up once I hear those strings going off. I'm gonna look up and go, okay, something's about to happen. Um, I could see myself 100% doing that. So for just jumping right into it, obviously this is 5 stars for me. I really did enjoy this, and I will watch this again.
Mm, okay. I'm happy to go next, but I also feel like, since we know Kevin's gonna give it a terrible score, maybe we want to sandwich his in between ours.
I give it a terrible score. It's not even a good score. Um, I will say, I did forget to mention one thing that the girls pointed out when they brought the baby in that little dress and hat. And
Oh my! You watched this with them. That's why you didn't like it because they were bored to tears with this movie.
This is in one of the restarts. They came in. They're like, "Oh, is that
restarts?"
Yeah.
Oh my!
They're like,
"Bro, we're watching movies for kids now. That's what's happening."
No, they walked in. They're like, "Is that baby in a dress and a top hat?" I was like, "It's not a top hat, but it's a cute hat." I'm like, so that little outfit was a hit with the kids. But I will admit that the music, especially during like the boy dying scene, was very well done. I I will one day make my way back to watch this because again, everything I've read said upon more viewings you will appreciate it more. Maybe I will. Maybe one day. So I'm not going to give it a 1 because, like I said, I will. I will not give it higher than what I'm going to give it because I won't recommend it to people. If you're out there and you want to watch it, go ahead and watch it because everyone seems to love it outside of me. But my rating will be a 2 because I do plan to rewatch it one day in my life, hopefully before I die, and see if maybe it hits me a little different.
I don't know how you put a 2 as a rewatch. A 2 I would never watch again.
Oh, hey.
He would rewatch it more for like research.
Yeah, because
Right.
apparently
Exploration.
I may be missing something.
Yeah, man, because it took
I-
you 17 tries to watch this movie.
I'm not going to rewatch it out of a
You
desire.
started
to
at different
watch it.
times.
I'm not gonna put it on the background as my background movie, but like I said, I will give it a rewatch because apparently from everything I'm saying I've missed stuff, and again it won't be anytime soon, but I will make my way down this path another time in my life.
It sounds like you have like a 2023 mindset with a movie that came out in 1975.
Well, and unfortunately I live in 2023, so I don't know what I'm supposed to say about that.
Okay.
What is that? Continue.
So-
Sorry. Go ahead. I'm about to go in. I don't want to go in. So go ahead, Kevin. All right, Juan.
Hey, you also don't like westerns, so it's okay. Everyone has their preference.
But he doesn't like period pieces. He doesn't like Kubrick. He doesn't like.
First of all, I like Kubrick.
I know, but that's what I'm trying to say.
and
You're
I
saying
love-
I don't like westerns,
Yeah,
but
and I love
he
period pieces.
never said
Hey,
anything
listen,
about
all those
Yeah.
people that watched it in the 70s didn't really like it the first time. So Kevin, who was born in the 70s, is just having a similar experience to them. Next time he watches it, he's going to love it. You and I are
Ahead of the curve.
born in the 80s. Yeah, and so we got there a little bit quicker.
We have more smarts. I feel you. That makes
But
sense.
for me, again, I would recommend this. I don't think that everyone that I recommended it to would love it or even finish it, just because, it is, like Mark said, 2023, and it's not the type of film that most casual viewers are accustomed to. However, if they are fans of Stanley Kubrick, I think they would definitely be pleased. If it's also someone wanting to get into Stanley Kubrick, I probably wouldn't start them off with this one, just because I think you appreciate it more when you kind of have a sense of what Stanley Kubrick is all about, what kind of filmmaker he is or he was. That, at least for me, helped me to jump into the story and appreciate more things about it. So I also don't necessarily think it's his best film. Like I don't think it would rank as number one for me if I was making a list of his films. But again, that doesn't on its own, that's not a knock on it. I really enjoyed it. I will definitely watch it again, and I thought it was thought provoking and just really, really good, as well as entertaining. And so for me, taking all those things into consideration, I will give it a 4 out of 5 stars for me. So something I would definitely watch again, and we'll continue to kind of think about, remember the experience. It definitely was impressionable and memorable. So
All right.
yeah.
Love to hear it.
Yep.
I respect that.
If anyone is interested in watching this film, I believe we all watched it on Amazon Prime. I think it was $2.99
Yeah.
for the 30-day rental. Good
30
quality.
days. Yeah. I will be watching it again in 30 days.
Yeah. Better watch it before it expires.
Kevin won't be, even though he said he'll watch it again. He won't watch it in 30 days.
Oh no, not in 30 days.
Even though he's paid for it.
I also didn't pay for it because I think Movie Land TV is what I saw it on.
Really?
My Roku, yeah. So it just played through. I was like, oh.
Did it have ads?
It had ad breaks that weren't ad breaks. Like it would look like it would cut the ad, but then it would just continue the scene. And like
Sick.
See, in so many ways, you got such a different experience from all of us, and now this is all coming together. Your kids were there. You got ads in the middle. You're
no,
falling
no, but they
asleep. You're
weren't ads.
waking
It was
up.
just
You're
like a little.
daydreaming.
It was just like a little black thing, boop, boop. And then like I'm like, oh, this continued. I thought it was going to be an ad, but that I was going to do that. And if it was going to give me ads, I was going to pay for it. But it didn't give me ads. It just played straight through. I'm like, okay. I'm like, but you could tell that there was supposed to be an ad break there, but then the scene would just continue right after, like continuously.
All right.
Oh,
Interesting.
my sweet baby boy.
Well, we certainly hope that you enjoyed this exclusive episode. We will be back with another one. I don't know if we'll
80s.
be releasing all these at the same time or how all that's going to work at this point, but someone will be next with a different decade. Until then, I wish you all a bon voyage.
Love you.